personally feel, and that will make great impact. And it will not bring Amrut Kal for India if we are not investing in health and education. So the figures are not telling the truth. Figures are being, just statistically speaking, 1,11,000 crores is not the right amount. It has to be in proportion to the GDP. And if we see global scenario, that I am saying that there are countries which are investing more than 6%, more than 5%, more than 4.5%, and we are nowhere in comparison with that. And basically, we are very weak in quality of our universities. Private universities we are inviting, but at the same time, we should have been empowered our own select quality universities, public and private both, by providing them resources. Maybe that can be a loan resource, like we are providing to farmers. But that has not happened. And for one global quality university to establish, we need 7 to 8,000 crores. The already developed institution like IITs, IIMs, and public and private universities select, they are definitely around 40 to 50. If we give such kind of impetus for the development and being competitive globally, then our universities will be able to compete with the 500 international universities which are, we have invited them to come to India. It's good for competition. It is good for development. It is good for quality enhancement. But when our own universities are weak and we are not providing them equal opportunity to play a level playing field in economics terms, then I think we are going in a wrong direction. So R&D, number one, quality of higher education. Number two, quality of school education. And overall improvement in the education sector is the most important priority sector should have been made by the government of India. We want to execute. So this is the problematic execution of NEP. So words are very flowery, right? Very pleasing, but on ground, it is not being seen. I am very sad that for defense we are investing more than around 5.5 lakhs crores. It is required, I agree. But at the same time, for the social defense, defense of the R&D, defense of the society, futuristic knowledge economy, we need to invest into higher education, which China has done in last 20 years. And therefore, they could develop the world-class universities in China. This is my opinion, straightforward, clear-cut. Yeah, Vinita, over to you.
Vinita, you are muted.
Thank you, sir, for voicing your honest opinion, which is heartfelt. Yes, government has increased education funding allocation, but they need to do more. We have Mr. Neeraj Saxena, who is Managing Director of Xscale, who is an angel investor and promotes startups ecosystem by funding them. Neeraj, will you please welcome on board and please briefly introduce yourself to the viewers? You have to unmute yourself. Unmute, please.
Yeah, may I add one, joke and cartoon I saw today. There were young boys standing and someone was telling them that, see, in income tax, lot of remission and concessions has been given. You should be happy. Then he said those boys said, we don't have income. We need that. So that kind of reactions from, very truth-telling reactions are coming. So is this our budget is centered for middle class, upper middle class, or is it addressing to the 95% population, which is aspiring population, and they need education and health in a better format and qualitative
Sure.
education,
Thank you,
affordable
sir.
cost.
Yeah. We will come back to those questions later on. So welcome on board, Neeraj. Please briefly introduce yourself.
Thanks, Sunita, for having me here. Hi, my name is, as you mentioned already, is Neeraj Saxena. I am managing director of Xscale. So we are a company who invest in Indian B2B SaaS startup and also at the same time help them scale their business in Indian and international markets. So that's a quick and then short introduction about us.
So what is your take on this budget announcements? Our previous panelists pointed out that there has been very less allocation on R&D in every sector in general,
True.
right? And since you are related to startup ecosystem, and which basically means R&D based, because any startup needs some innovative solution, or they are making, or they are producing, or service or product, whatever. So what do you think in relation to the startups, in relation to the corporate, in relation to this R&D?
Absolutely. So I will definitely share my thoughts. So ultimately, so just 3 days back, on my LinkedIn profile, I shared what are my expectations, from this budget, especially for the startup ecosystem, right? And in reference to that, I'd like to touch upon what has been addressed and what has been left out, and I'll specifically answer your question on R&D as well, right?
Yeah.
So some of the let me talk about the positive things first, right? So first positive thing is that there is a section under which the company is incorporated as a startup and granted a DPIT, the startup certificate, are exempted for paying income tax or allowed to have tax holiday for 3 years. The earlier date for those companies, they have to be registered before 31st March 23. That has been extended to now 31st March 24. That is the end of the next financial year. And it looks like they will extend it year by year. So they are taking policy on it, taking a shot on it year by year. So that's a very positive sign that in the next year, all the companies that are being incorporated in next financial year will enjoy those tax benefits. There are quite a few other benefits under that section. So that's one positive sign, at least for the next coming year for the Indian startup ecosystem. The second positive thing is the carry forward of the losses. Of a regular company is normally 7 years. For a startup, there are some caveats, but has been extended for a startup, it has been extended to 10 years. Now, this is a great sign because most of the startup don't make any money, or normally they are burning, they are surviving on the venture capital and a burn mode. So 7 years was absolutely a term which was less than the reality. And 10 years is a much more realistic term that they should be able to carry forward the losses, and once they become profitable, they can set off those losses. So again, it's a positive news for the startup ecosystem. The third, I think the major positive news here is that there is an India Startup Seed Fund scheme, right? The Startup India Seed Fund. So the allocation for that have gone up quite significantly. So last year the allocation in the budget was 100 crore. This year it was 283 crores. So again, a very positive sign because that's a scheme which is, I would say, fairly easy accessible to most of the startups. A lot of the startups we know that got benefited out of that scheme. So a very positive sign to promote the entrepreneurship in the country. So very positive three things. And interestingly, I have put two of the asks in my ask from the finance minister in my LinkedIn post, right? So those two things have been taken care of. So that's amazing or very, very positive. What has been missed out, right? Let's discuss about that. One of the key things that has been missed out is the parity of the LTCD tax on the startup investment versus the listed equity. So today, the startup investment does not enjoy the same kind of LTCD rate that is allowed or that is available to the listed equity, which is not a good thing, because now on one hand we are promoting the startups, we want, and for a startup to survive, they need capital. You all understand that, to build a business, a capital is required, and there are investors who are putting their money behind that, taking all the more risk than a listed equity. They are obviously startup investments are far riskier than the listed equity, right? Investments. And at the same time, they are penalized by charging higher, long-term capital gain tax, which should have been addressed. I think this is a ask for now at least a few years now, and that has not been addressed. So that's a one big miss, I would say, in this was the biggest miss, I would say, from the startup ecosystem ask perspective, right? There are few other things which does not, been again addressed. Now, what is the, and then this is very specific to venture capital and venture capitalists, right? What is the tax treatment on some of the components that venture capital fund has? There are management fees, carry, etc. There is still ambiguity in some of those areas, that what is the tax treatment on such income for a venture capital fund, right? How it should be treated. It has been debated, etc., at different forums, to the extent, so certain notice has been sent, and then basically there is not 100% transparency. So that has to be brought in, because if you want to make venture capital, more accessible, you want more international investors to come in, or even the domestic investor to participate more, you need to make the rules very transparent, very clear, and at the same time in line with the international rules. So that's another thing that has been left out again. And I think the one bigger thing which also needed, some kind of thought from the government is the FDI investment in a startup, right? So theoretically, I think the FDI inflow and outflow looks fairly easy. They say this is automatic route, etc. But I think there is still a lot of rules and regulation when you bring in capital, and by the way, it is fairly complicated when you take out the capital out of the country. Now, if you make the taking out the capital difficult, you will find that international investors are scary of putting in the capital back in India. This is the third big problem, or that has not been addressed out. So I would say these are the three hits and three biggest misses from my point of view. Just to address your question in R&D, yes, I think what the other panelists has said is right. R&D budget has not gone up significantly. Addressing in context of the startup space, look, startup space hardly gets any R&D budget from the government. So it does not, have a direct impact or a major impact on a startup ecosystem, because it's not like there are government schemes on R&D, etc., from where the startups directly get any R&D budgets. There are certain programs, some DSIT schemes, etc. Sometimes, they buy the DSIT, IDEX. So there are certain kind of, the schemes that are there through which the startup gets some grant for innovation. But I think what most of the startup R&D is funded by, either the venture capital mostly, right, or from their own operational expense, right. So had they increased it, it was obviously created a much more positive impact on long-term economic growth. So yeah, I think obviously that's something that needs improvement in years to come. But that's where I think I rest my case. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell what I feel about budget. Vinita, back to you. I think you are on mute.
You'll have to unmute. Yes.
Yeah. So before taking queries raised by two members, we will go on to our next guest speaker, who is Captain Shekhar Gupta. Captain Shekhar Gupta, please switch on your video and unmute yourself. Shekhar Gupta. Shekhar, are you there? I can see you on screen, but I think he is. Ria, please call Mr. Shekhar Gupta.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, so there were two raised till the time Shekhar joins us. There were two raised hands. If you can
Yeah,
voice
chip in? Can I chip in, ma'am?
Yes, please.
No, I just wanted to reflect on what Professor Gavane was talking about, and his focus was the lack of support to the education system, of course, which has gone up of late. But then when and I would like to comment on, especially from the point of view of what we call as the new education policy 2020. And when that policy was launched, I remember a movie called Three Idiots, which made mockery of the many ills of the education system that prevailed in India. Time and again in that movie, Amir Khan proved that the education system just does not lead to improved knowledge. It only leads to a lot of pressure on kids and rote learning. And there's one professor called Professor Sugata Mitra from Oxford. He has written a book called Hole in the Wall, and you'll also find he's a great TED speaker. If one can find his talk on the net, and he's extremely critical of the education system. And he says the education system does not really allow students to or anyone to can think creatively as such. And that's the reason one of the statements which was made by the Prime Minister when he said, till date, we've been focusing on what to think in our education policy. And now we must start thinking in terms of how to think. And that is precisely what this budget is talking about. It is really trying to ensure that the ideas of a national education policy gets implemented. And there's a lot of focus on that. And what does it really talk about? The salient features of new education policy talks about scalability. It talks about the universal access at all levels of school education. It talks about attaining foundational literacy in numbers, in technologically speaking, and there has to be a huge reform in the curriculum and pedagogy, and it actually focuses on the childhood care and education. Now, if you look into the salient features of the education budget in the presented by the finance minister, it talks about what? It says some of the salient features which are extremely impressive. It talks a lot about a focus on effective teacher training as such. It is trying to build a resilient mechanism for education delivery so that the quality also improves. It is trying to train teachers and the students for innovative pedagogy. Nice and decent curriculum must really come into focus. There has to be continuous professional development. There has to be dipstick surveys to find out whether there is any advantage, what is the outcome of whatever classes or are conducted as such. There's a lot of focus on ICT implementation because that's the only way you can be scalable. There's a lot of focus on national digital library for children and adolescents. So it also talks about making AI, artificial intelligence, work for India. These are excellent things because these are all experiential. This is the only way. We will not just provide education for the heck of it, for the sake of it, but the current budget is for saying that let us now also start helping students think creatively, because that's one thing which is going to sustain in what we call as the VUCA world as such. Ma'am, over to you.
Mohit, you wanted to say something?
I just want to add one thing in the startup. Recently, yesterday in the yesterday budget, there was one amendment in the startup that in case if there is any change in the shareholding, then the loss can be carried forward from 7 years to 10 years. That means they are getting 3 years advantage. They will be able to carry forward the losses for upcoming next 3 years. This is one of the advantage which government is providing to startups now.
Okay.
You see, when we are talking of this budget, my first thing is to put this budget into context. What is the international context and the domestic context? And there I find that you see what is happening in the world. 2 days ago, the IMF economic growth projections have come out. We all know the percentages of that. India, this current financial year expected is 6.8. It will go down to 6.1%. And in 24, it will rise again to 6.8%. Our nearest competitor for this year is UK at 4.1%, who for next year will go into negative growth, minus 0.6. Otherwise, our most mind space is with China. China has grown this year at 3.0, but next year, 5.26. It's phenomenal. But it will come down to 4.5 next year. So UK, I've told you, US presently 2.0%, and next year it will be at 1.4%. And America, the recession and the lies that they are telling, we all know about it. So this is one indicator on the international context of the Indian budget, that India has an excellent growth and an excellent growth forecast in comparison to the rest of the world. The way we have handled COVID, the way we have handled production of COVID-related PPE, oxygen, etc., has done our economy good. We are moving not only to sufficiency, but to export. So that is good. The global growth is expected to fall from 3.4% this current fiscal to 2.9% before it rises to 3.1 in 2024. So for India, the recession risks have subsided. We have made progress. We have buffered our society from inflation much better than most other countries of the world. Our policies on import of raw oil, etc., have kept our petroleum prices under check. But the Ukraine war is not over. China's COVID lies are not over. So new surprises may be on the way. So with this as the international context, if you see the domestic context, Prime Minister said, budget vanchiton ko variyat deta hai. Very true. We are providing to meet the justifiable aspirations of all segments of our society. So that is why we see who gets what, different sections of society. Plus, again, from domestic to international, the budgetary commitments are proof to the world about where India's priority lies. Because political rhetoric is one thing. Budgetary commitment and allocation is clear proof of a country's intentions and priorities. Of course, we have revised estimates and later allocations. That's a different matter. So that part, these two things combined give us a very positive picture. And that 20-page document that was released and all CAs forwarded to everybody. So all of you must have got at least 15, 20 copies of that 20-page government document. It is informative. The Saptarishi, the 7 areas of focus of the budget, etc., that's government talk, which is positive. The actual impetus to Gati Shakti, that's a positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Agarwal. I can see that you have deeply understood the budget and nicely put up in the international and national context. Yes, we should, as a democratic country and as intellects, look at positive and look at missed parts which needs more, focus in coming years. Yes, we have been progressive. As a layman, I can tell you that my mate does not like to be called poor now. And that's a positive sign of society. She doesn't like to be called poor. In COVID, they got some funds to sustain in their banks. That was a big relief to them. Obviously, NGOs also worked. People also in their personal, individual capacity worked towards them. But for sure, funding in their banks from the government helped them a security, a sense of security. Then COVID vaccination, the way massively it was given to all the masses, irrespective of their creed, caste, or gender, or the financial status. Obviously, it is laudable because it was a massive disaster in our country. In any country, obviously throughout the world, it was seamless tragedy which happened, and we are able to come out of that as of now. And as you said, surprises may be there, and we need to keep alert for that. But yes, there are areas which needs more focus, and highlighting them will help government to think over them. As per me, I always write emails wherever possible to the ministries, to the departments. I give my suggestions as a layman, or as whatever I feel that it should be taken up. Some of them have been taken up by the authorities. So I see that this government has ears. It hears you, it listens to you, it takes up suggestions, it gives these suggestions to the to the committees comprising of experts like all of you, and they are heard through. So we should keep on working, and that's what I tell my friend circle also. It's very easy to blame anyone, for that matter, opposition or the government. You can choose parties and you can blame anyone. That's very easy to do over a cup of coffee. But if you have any complaint right now, there are social medias. Please put up a tweet. Please put up a message to the government. Say, we are not happy with this. This should be this way. Send your message across in a obviously nice way, not in an abusive way. Like if somebody tells you something in abusive way, even you won't like. So why would the government like anybody for that matter? So we should be respectful to each other, but pass on your message. Because जनता की आवाज सरकार तक पहुंचेगी तो सरकार उसके ऊपर ध्यान देगी और कुछ काम करेगी. तो आवाज तो पहुंचानी जरूरी है, अच्छी भी, और जो हमें नहीं समझ आता वो भी, जो हमें चाहिए वो भी. Right? Thank you so much for your time. I think Captain Shekhar got busy on a call, so he left the panel. It's okay. Thank you so much for being here for this discussion.
It was very nice to listen to my panelists today.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Pleasure meeting all of you. Namaskaram, Professor Sudhir Gawane Sahib. And pleasure listening to you, Neeraj, as well. And the others we have introduced ourselves earlier. Thank you all. Goodbye.
This is actually a rainbow of ideas and perspectives. So we saw that rainbow.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was so wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'm ending this meeting, and this would be uploaded after editing on YouTube channel Bizemag. Please subscribe and share it among your circles. It was live on LinkedIn, so that you can always share from my profile. And it was live on Twitter also of Bizemag. So this bizemag.com, that is
why don't you tag us on LinkedIn, etc.
We will. Yes, that I will do.
We'll do that.
बस आप टैग करोगे अपने आप सबके पास आ जाएगा.
Sure.
LinkedIn पे तो.
My connection request to you is pending on LinkedIn. Brigadier Sanjay Agarwal.
Okay. I'm a very poor guy on LinkedIn. I'm a sleeping partner type. Let me see.
We got connected long back, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ending now.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.